Hey there. Welcome to a story rooted in one of the most pivotal moments of the Pacific War. A discovery on a remote Alaskan island that would forever change the course of aerial combat. Imagine a nearly intact Japanese Zero fighter, lying upside down in the muddy marshes of Akuten Island, revealing secrets that would expose its deadly weaknesses and turn the tide of battle. How could a plane so legendary in its speed and agility be so fragile beneath its sleek exterior? What hidden flaws made this seemingly invincible machine vulnerable to American tactics? Could the death of a young pilot, just 19 years old, hold the key to unlocking the Zero's true nature? And most startlingly, how did a single bullet, piercing its fragile fuel tank, bring about its downfall and provide the Allies with a decisive advantage? This aircraft, once a symbol of Japan's air supremacy, was built with a radical philosophy: prioritize lightness, speed, and maneuverability over armor and protection. Did this design choice make it a marvel of engineering or a death trap in disguise? As American pilots studied its lightweight construction, its super duralumin wings, minimal cockpit armor, and self-sealing tanks, they realized that what seemed to be a masterpiece of aeronautical finesse was fundamentally flawed. How could a fighter so fast and agile be so vulnerable to a single shot? Could mastering its weaknesses mean the difference between victory and disaster in the skies? The core question emerges: does understanding the Zero's hidden vulnerabilities reveal a deeper truth about the nature of technological superiority in war? Are the myths of invincibility merely illusions, deceptions that, once broken, can be exploited to turn the tide? In this video, we'll trace the journey from the wreckage on Akuten Island, through meticulous analysis and daring tests, to the development of new tactics and aircraft, culminating in a strategic revolution that shifted the balance of power in the Pacific. The most astonishing part? The secrets of a seemingly unbeatable enemy fighter were unlocked not through direct combat, but through a crash, a young pilot's sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. So get ready. What started as a tragic accident would become a turning point, revealing that the true strength of an aircraft isn't just in its speed or maneuverability, but in how well its weaknesses are understood and exploited. The story begins right now. July 10, 1942. At Akuten Island, nestled within the vast expanse of the Alaska Territory, an air of tense anticipation hung heavy in the brisk, salty air. Machinist-mate Albert Knack, gripping the edges of the observation window on his PBY Catalina, gazed intently below, his hands trembling ever so subtly as he scrutinized the marshy landscape. His eyes darted across the terrain, unwavering, fixating on the faint markers that confirmed a shocking discovery lurked within the thick mud and tall grasses. The unmistakable bright red circles, the rising sun insignia emblazoned across the wings of the wreckage, unmistakably identified this strange sight as a Japanese Zero fighter, and one that had evidently turned upside down, lying nearly intact in the wet grass. The scene below was surreal. A fighter plane, a symbol of Japan's air power, seemingly abandoned in a cruel twist of fate. The pilot, Lieutenant William Thez, command pilot of the patrol aircraft, was caught in a reckless moment of misfortune. Lost amidst the dense fog that cloaked the Aleutian Islands, an area of treacherous weather and disorienting cloud banks, he had inadvertently drifted over this unfamiliar terrain. Relying on dead reckoning, Thez had eventually reoriented himself over the Shimon Islands, deciding to fly directly westward, taking the shortest possible route back to Dutch Harbor, flying directly above Akuten Island. This particular course, rarely undertaken by pilots due to its danger and unpredictability, would soon prove to be one of the most pivotal decisions in the ongoing Pacific conflict. It was a route that could alter the entire strategic landscape, an extraordinary flight that might unveil secrets long hidden. Nak thought, almost dismissively, that perhaps they were seeing things. No Japanese pilot, after risking all that this crash represented, would simply leave such a prize behind. It defied every expectation. For more than a year, this aircraft, the Zero, had struck terror into the heart of Allied forces in the Pacific. Its reputation was legendary, a formidable weapon of war, cloaked in destructive efficiency. The Zero had become the face of Japan's air superiority, a mysterious marvel that had effortlessly decimated fleets of American, British, and Chinese fighters alike across the vast theater of the Pacific. Its impressiveness was not merely anecdotal but had been demonstrated repeatedly, from the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor to fierce combats over the Philippines, across Burma, and in Malaya. In each engagement, the Zero's combination of speed, maneuverability, and extended range had rewritten the rules of aerial warfare, emerging victorious time and again. It was a fighter aircraft of unprecedented design, a carrier-based marvel that seemed to outperform any land-based interceptor that challenged it. During this period, American pilots were beginning to understand the Zero's deadly strengths, so much so that the aircraft's notoriety was founded on both awe and dread. When American fighters encountered these planes in the skies over China, often facing off against outdated Soviet-built fighters, the kill ratios were alarming, as high as 12-1 in favor of the Zero. By April of the year 1942, a Japanese strike force composed of 36 Zeros had attacked a British airfield, shooting down 27 British aircraft for the loss of only 5 Japanese planes. These victories had hardened the Japanese fighters' reputation as virtually invincible. The official American military doctrine in response to the Zero's dominance was stark and straightforward: run, avoid confrontation, and never engage head-on in a dogfight. The strategy was rooted in brutal mathematics. Attempting to match these nimble fighters in close aerial combat often resulted in catastrophic losses. American fighters attempting to turn and fight against the Zero unescorted rarely survived long enough to report their mistakes, for the aircraft's superior agility and long-range capabilities gave the Japanese pilots a lethal advantage. June 4, 1942, the very day of the pivotal Battle of Midway, less than 2 miles to the south, marked another chapter in the intense struggle for control of the Pacific. As part of Japan's complex and calculated operation to seize the Midway Atoll, a diversionary attack was launched against the Aleutian Islands with the ulterior purpose of distracting and drawing American forces away from the main objective. Among the Japanese forces was a small but significant contingent of inexperienced yet brave pilots, including 19-year-old Flight Petty Officer Tadayoshi Koga. Operating from the Japanese aircraft carrier Ryujo, Koga was part of a daring effort to challenge the unpredictable and deadly American defenses and to create chaos and confusion in the crucial mid-Pacific region. As this dramatic story unfolded in the icy northern waters, fate would soon ensnare the aircraft in the marshes of Akuten Island, altering the course of history and providing a glimpse into technological and tactical paradoxes that would shape the air war for years to come. The second strike against Dutch Harbor had once again demonstrated the fierce tactical efforts of the Japanese forces, and among the pivotal moments was the incident involving Tadayoshi Koga's aircraft. His reconnaissance plane, bearing the unmarked serial number 4005-193, was part of a covert 3-plane formation assigned with a specific and deadly mission: to launch a swift strafing attack on the American naval base situated on an island in the remote parts of Alaska. Under the cover of darkness and while cloaked in the early dawn, Koga's squadron, including the seasoned Chief Petty Officer Makoto Endo and Petty Officer Sugo Shikarda, made a daring and aggressive approach toward the harbor, unleashing their attack with devastating precision. They succeeded in downing an American PBY-5A Catalina flying boat, a vital asset in the U.S. surveillance network, and continued their assault by strafing personnel and any movement in the water, inflicting chaos and damage in the process. However, amid the chaos of the attack, intense small arms fire from the ground struck Koga's aircraft, sending a sharp and dangerous bullet through one of its vital systems. This projectile severed an oil line that supplied lubrication to the engine, a seemingly minor but ultimately fatal wound. While the aircraft was still able to stay airborne at that moment, the damage was critical and quickly resulted in a loss of oil pressure. As oil gushed from the fractured line, the engine's vital lubrication failed, causing it to seize up progressively. Within minutes, the airplane's engine died, leaving its pilot with a rapidly deteriorating situation in the cold Alaskan air. Approximately 25 miles east of Dutch Harbor, there lay Akuten Island, a key location meticulously selected by Japanese strategic planners as an emergency landing site. This island had a special purpose. It was identified as a potential safe haven for pilots forced to make emergency landings so close to home bases. Offshore, a Japanese submarine patiently awaited, theoretically positioned to initiate a rescue operation should a pilot survive and be capable of being recovered. As Koga's aircraft's oil pressure dropped further and he realized his engine was about to fail, he made a quick decision. He broadcast a signal to his wingman, indicating his situation, and then turned the aircraft toward the island, aiming for what he hoped would be a survivable landing. From above, the island's terrain appeared deceptively inviting. The grassy flatland, seen from the air, looked pristine and perfectly flat, an ideal landing zone just half a mile inland from Windows Bay, near a feature known as Broadbight. The field's surface seemed solid and safe enough for landing, yet appearances betrayed the truth. Petty Officer Shikarda, observing from his orbit above with a keen eye, suddenly noticed an unexpected glint of water flickering across the grass. His growing sense of dread intensified as he realized that what appeared to be firm ground was, in fact, marshland. A treacherous and soft, muddy terrain that could swallow even the most carefully executed belly landings. Despite his frantic efforts to signal Koga to abort the approach and attempt a safer, more controlled belly landing, the Japanese pilot had already committed himself to the landing approach, lowering his aircraft's landing gear in preparation. It was too late. The Zero's wheels, a fragile component in itself, caught the soft grass before the aircraft could halt. Almost immediately, the wheels sank into the mud, lurching the aircraft forward with violent force. The sudden, severe impact caused the plane to pitch forward abruptly, flipping end over end and cartwheeling onto its roof. The aircraft finally came to a halt, upside down, though the majority of its frame, the wings and fuselage, remained largely intact in the wreckage. Within the inverted cockpit, the fatality was instantaneous. Tadayoshi Koga was killed instantly by the violent impact, his neck broken from the sudden and severe jolt. The scene was heart-wrenching but also riddled with a troubling dilemma. The other two pilots, Endo and Shikarda, who had circled above the wreckage, were caught between conflicting orders and moral obligations. As Japanese pilots, they had explicit instructions to destroy any Zero aircraft that crash-landed behind enemy lines. Such measures were essential to prevent enemy forces from capturing sensitive technology and future strategic knowledge. The aircraft itself held secrets that could tip the balance of power. Its design, capabilities, and technological innovations, all too valuable to allow to fall into American hands. However, complicating matters was the undeniable fact that Koga might still be alive, trapped inside the wreckage. The men, torn by conflicting loyalty and emotion, found themselves unable to carry out a strafing attack on their fallen comrade. After several excruciating circles above the wreckage, with their fuel running dangerously low and inclement weather rapidly closing in, the pilots made the difficult decision to turn away. Their only hope was that a Japanese submarine would arrive soon to recover Koga's body and aircraft. They were dispatched to assess the wreckage and determine the extent of the damage. Even in its battered state, the Zero's form retained a striking, almost predatory grace, a testament to its designer's craftsmanship. Its sleek, aerodynamic lines and minimal protrusions suggested a craft built for speed and agility, cloaked in an elegance that spoke of ruthless efficiency in the air. Despite being upside down and battered, the aircraft's silhouette conveyed a latent power, hinting at a lethal machine that had once dominated Pacific skies. Photographers captured the wreck from every conceivable angle, meticulously documenting every detail before any attempt at recovery began. These images would serve as crucial references for future analysis and understanding of this elusive enemy fighter. After completing their detailed survey, the team carefully extracted Koga from the cockpit, treating him with respect as they laid him to rest nearby, an acknowledgement that, even in conflict, honor and dignity remained sacred. His humble burial, a somber acknowledgement of his sacrifice, echoed beyond national boundaries, emphasizing the universal respect owed to those who fought and fell. With the initial emotional steps behind them, the team shifted focus to the crucial technical assessment. They commenced a detailed examination of the aircraft's structure, meticulously noting each feature and flaw. What they observed during those first hours would become as significant as the upcoming tests. They would shape the understanding of the Zero's capabilities and design philosophy. Remarkably, the aircraft was astonishingly lightweight, not just in the total mass but in each part, every sheet of skin, every internal component. Handle the fuselage, and its thin, almost fragile feel became immediately apparent. Scarborough ran his hand along the surface and tapped it gently, producing a hollow sound reminiscent of a tin can, a startling discovery that contrasted sharply with their expectations of a robust, battle-hardened plane. There was no heavy armor guarding the cockpit, nor was there armored glass to protect the pilot from enemy fire. Instead, the canopy featured standard transparent panels, simple, unreinforced acrylic similar to that used in everyday vehicles. A further, troubling insight emerged upon inspecting the fuel tanks. These were nothing more than basic aluminum reservoirs, unlined, unsealed, lacking the self-sealing technology common in modern American fighters. They offered no additional protection against punctures or leaks, starkly contradicting the prevailing standards of military aircraft design, which prioritized survivability through advanced armor and self-sealing systems. This absence hinted at a different school of thought in Japanese aircraft engineering, perhaps focusing on lightness and speed over protection, a tactic that played into the Zero's legendary agility but at significant risk to the pilot's safety. The recovery process had to overcome numerous obstacles. The prevailing illusory weather, often unpredictable with sudden storms and dense fog, hampered the first attempts at retrieval. During one such effort on July, perhaps the 12th, the team, led by Lieutenant Robert Kerms, managed to hold a proper, respectful Christian burial for Koga, replacing the hurried grave from the day prior. The weather remained hostile, and weakened anchors from the delivery ship caused its loss in rough seas, forcing subsequent delays. Finally, on July the 15th, conditions improved sufficiently for a barge to reach the site. Workers hurried to assemble a rudimentary but functional sledge, designed to drag the heavily waterlogged aircraft through marshy terrain to the beach. Remarkably, even damaged and waterlogged, the Zero's weight was surprisingly manageable, with 6 men able to maneuver it with relative ease. The aircraft was then carefully loaded onto the USS St. Milliam, a vessel that would ferry it across the vast Pacific. The journey toward discovery did not end in the harbor. Instead, the Zero traveled to Seattle, arriving by August 1st. From there, it was transferred aboard a barge that hauled it south along the California coast to Naval Air Station North Island near San Diego, a voyage that took almost an entire month. During this time, American intelligence officers vigorously pored over the photographs taken at the crash site, debating every detail to glean insights into the enemy's aircraft technology. Once at North Island, the aircraft was placed under 24-hour military police guard, not primarily to thwart sabotage, though that concern was real, but to prevent untrained or overly eager personnel from dismantling the fighter piece by piece in a frantic quest for souvenirs. Every mechanic, pilot, and engineer who visited the aircraft was eager to claim a fragment of the legendary Zero, but strict orders told the guards to shoot anyone attempting unauthorized access or removal. Professional Navy mechanics began an intricate process of disassembly and repair, applying their extensive expertise to work on the battered fighter. These seasoned technicians understood that studying this aircraft could reveal critical weaknesses and advantages, offering a glimpse into the enemy's strategic thinking. Their meticulous efforts laid the groundwork for future analysis, with each bolt removed and each panel examined, bringing them closer to understanding the true nature of this elusive Pacific adversary. As they cautiously approached the aircraft, their expectations were colored by long-standing rumors and propaganda. The Zero was often described as a crude imitation, an aircraft hurriedly assembled using inferior materials and plagued by poor craftsmanship. These reports painted it as a design built with a lack of finesse, an awkward and clumsy copy of more sophisticated Western models. Their preconceptions were rooted in a belief that the Japanese, despite their technological ambitions, might have settled for a subpar, hastily assembled fighter lacking in refinement and durability. However, what they observed upon closer inspection shattered those preconceived notions. What they initially assumed to be a primitive, poorly made craft proved to be a marvel of lightweight engineering. The Zero emerged as a refined example of aeronautical design, carefully optimized to reduce weight without compromising structural integrity or performance. Each component of the aircraft seemed to have been meticulously crafted with an obsessive focus on minimizing its mass. The main wing spars, for instance, were constructed from an advanced lightweight aluminum alloy known as superduralumin, which had been developed by Sumitomo Metal Industries back in 1936. This alloy was a sophisticated combination of zinc and aluminum, producing a material that was lighter and stronger than conventional aircraft aluminum. Despite its impressive properties, it naturally had a tendency toward corrosion, a weakness that the Japanese engineers mitigated by applying a zinc chromate coating after the manufacturing process. This careful treatment demonstrated a level of metallurgical sophistication that rivaled, if not exceeded, that of contemporary American techniques. The structural elements of the plane revealed inventive strategies for weight savings. The wing attachment fittings, for example, were notably minimized by permanently bonding the wings directly to the fuselage, thereby eliminating the need for large, removable mounting joints common in other aircraft. Additionally, the rear fuselage section, located immediately behind the cockpit, was designed to be detachable for maintenance purposes, which streamlined repairs and kept the forward fuselage lighter and more aerodynamically efficient. Strategic placement of the engine behind the wing's leading edge allowed designers to craft a shorter, lighter tail assembly, which contributed to the aircraft's overall agility and balance without adding unnecessary weight. The control surfaces, the ailerons, elevators, and rudders, were covered with lightweight fabric, in stark contrast to American designs that utilized heavier metal components for these parts. Even the landing gear struts were notably more slender than those employed by their American counterparts, further underscoring the aircraft's dedication to weight reduction. The cockpit's internal framework was deliberately kept minimalistic, providing the pilot with excellent visibility, which was crucial for combat but offered no structural protection in case of damage or collision. During a recent crash, the repair team found that they could straighten the bent vertical stabilizer, rudder, wing tips, and canopy, indicating the robustness of the frame design. The landing struts, which had sheared off during the accident, were entirely replaced, yet the rest of the aircraft's structural elements remained surprisingly resilient. In the repair shop, the Sumitomo-made three-blade propeller was carefully cleaned, reassembled, and reused. Despite having sustained some damage, it remained capable of operation, a testament to the high manufacturing standards of Japanese aerospace components. As the maintenance work continued, precise measurements indicated that the aircraft, the Nakajima Zero, specifically the Model 2, had an all-up weight of around 5,555 pounds when fully loaded with fuel, ammunition, and pilot. In comparison, the American Grumman F-4F Wildcat, which served as the main carrier-based fighter for the United States Navy, tipped the scales at roughly 7,426 pounds. The Zero, therefore, was nearly 1,871 pounds lighter, about 2,000 pounds less, highlighting a significant disparity rooted directly in their respective design philosophies and engineering choices. This difference in weight translated vividly into performance capabilities. The Zero's power plant was a Nakajima Sakai 16-cylinder radial engine producing approximately 950 horsepower. By contrast, the Wildcat was powered by a Pratt & Whitney R1830 twin Wasp engine, which generated around 1,200 horsepower. Although the American engine provided roughly 300 horsepower more, the Wildcat's overall weight was substantially higher, by about 2,000 pounds, meaning the power-to-weight ratio favored the Zero decisively. The wing loading, the measure of aircraft weight relative to wing area, further accentuated the Zero's superiority in agility. The aircraft carried about 24.3 pounds per square foot of wing area, whereas the Wildcat carried approximately 28.6 pounds per square foot. A lower wing loading indicated that the Zero could perform tighter turns, climb more swiftly, and maneuver with greater aggressive agility. In a dogfight characterized by rapid, jinking movements, the physics of their design essentially gave the Zero an insurmountable advantage. Yet, as the maintenance crew delved deeper into examining the aircraft's fuel system, a troubling discovery emerged. The fuel tanks, constructed from simple aluminum and featuring thin walls, were unprotected and lacked any. The aircraft's fuel tanks incorporated a revolutionary design, consisting of a resilient outer shell made of vulcanized fabric and an internal, self-sealing lining comprising multiple layered materials. When punctured, this inner lining would swell, sealing small holes and effectively preventing fuel from spilling out. These self-sealing tanks represented a significant technological advancement in aviation safety, although they came with considerable drawbacks. Due to their complex construction, the tanks were notably heavier, more costly, and took up more space within the aircraft's fuselage, which meant less room for fuel overall. Nevertheless, the trade-off was often justified, as these tanks substantially increased the chances of survival during combat situations. While a conventional fuel tank, if breached by a single bullet, could ignite instantly, resulting in catastrophic fires and often death, a self-sealing tank could sustain minor damage, resulting only in a small, manageable leak that could be contained and tolerated without losing the aircraft. This relatively minor advantage underlined a pivotal choice faced by Japanese designers and pilots: achieve high performance at the expense of survivability. The Zero aircraft embodied this philosophy, prioritizing agility, speed, and sleekness over comprehensive safety measures. Every pilot operating the Zero was acutely aware that a single hit to the aircraft's fuel system could spell doom. Unlike the sturdier American fighters, which might leak fuel gradually or remain operable after sustaining minor damage, a shot to the Zero's fuel tank meant imminent fire, explosion, and likely destruction. The stark reality for Zero pilots was that the aircraft lacked sufficient safeguards such as armor around critical components, particularly the fuel system and the pilot himself, making survival increasingly improbable once hit. American adversaries had observed that Zero fighters would often burst into flames from seemingly minor damages, revealing an alarming vulnerability. The root of this problem became evident upon inspection. The Zero lacked the protective armor that American fighters had incorporated as standard. U.S. planes featured heavy steel plates mounted behind the pilot's seat, designed precisely to absorb or deflect enemy fire from behind and provide vital protection. These reinforced plates added significant weight but drastically improved pilot survivability from rear attacks, which were among the most common during dogfights. In stark contrast, the Zero's pilot sat exposed on a simple, lightweight frame with a minimal cushioning of fabric and a thin metal structure, offering little to no ballistic protection. A single bullet from a .50 caliber machine gun would comfortably pass through the thin metal seat and strike the pilot just as easily as it would penetrate unprotected flesh. The windscreen was made of standard glass, perhaps slightly thicker than civilian training aircraft, but entirely unarmed against small arms fire. American fighters, recognizing the importance of protecting their crews, increasingly adopted armored glass, bulky, heavy transparent shields capable of halting incoming rounds. The choice of lightweight design in the Zero meant to maximize maneuverability was achieved at the severe cost of pilot safety. Without armor even to defend the head and upper body, Zero pilots were extremely vulnerable in head-on confrontations, where incoming fire could be devastating. By September 20, 1942, just 2 months after a tragic crash, Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders was prepared for the first test flight of a fully repaired Zero. Sanders, a highly experienced naval test pilot whose career depended on precisely understanding the strengths and weaknesses of new aircraft, climbed into the cockpit, aware of the aircraft's resolute but minimalist design. He immediately noticed the cockpit's crampedness. Compared to American fighters, the space was markedly tighter, with less room to move. Nevertheless, the aircraft's Japanese engineering didn't fail in power. Its engine was reliable and robust, a testament to their focus on producing dependable power plants. As Sanders carefully taxied the aircraft across the runway, he was conscious of how challenging ground handling could be, owing to the narrow track of the landing gear that provided less stability during slow speeds or during taxiing maneuvers. Once he advanced the throttle, the Zero responded inertly but eagerly, accelerating swiftly along the runway. The takeoff, surprisingly, required only a very short distance before the aircraft was airborne. It raced immediately into the sky, climbing rapidly and with an almost urgent sense of purpose that caught Sanders off guard. At altitude, he commenced systematic testing, beginning with the basic handling characteristics of the fighter. He checked the aircraft's response in level flight, gentle turns, climbs, and descents. Each maneuver felt incredibly light and responsive, almost delicate in sensation. The controls, characterized by a small joystick and minimal resistance, felt highly sensitive, giving the pilot quick and precise feedback. After many years of flying American fighters, the Zero now felt like switching from a sturdy pickup truck to a sleek sports car, more agile, more responsive, but perhaps less forgiving under stress. Eager to push the aircraft to its limits, Sanders conducted speed tests, discovering that the Zero could reach roughly 330 miles per hour, faster than the older Wildcat fighter they often encountered, though not by an extensive margin. However, the aircraft's performance faltered when he attempted as the aircraft began to perform rolling maneuvers. Their response slowed noticeably, forcing the pilot to exert an excessive amount of pressure on the control stick simply to complete the rolls. Sanders conducted trials by rolling to the left and then to the right, discovering that the aircraft handled with relative ease when rolling left, but rolled noticeably more sluggishly and with greater difficulty when executing right-hand rolls. This asymmetry in maneuverability was a critical piece of intelligence for American pilots who might eventually face the Zero in combat. In a dogfight, a Zero pilot would likely develop a preference for executing left rolls, knowing the enemy's aircraft could turn more smoothly and swiftly in that direction. Recognizing this vulnerability, American pilots could intentionally leverage the Zero's tendencies by forcing it into right-hand rolls, where its responsiveness was significantly diminished due to inherent design limitations. The next experiment was particularly perilous. Sanders carefully put the Zero into a steep dive before sharply pulling back on the stick, inducing a negative acceleration, a moment of negative G-force that many pilots feared. At first, the engine coughed and sputtered, then suddenly died altogether, leaving the aircraft momentarily silent save for the rushing wind in the open cockpit. At that altitude, around 3,000 feet over the rugged California coastline, Sanders' aircraft was effectively gliding now, resembling a large, unpowered glider. Maintaining calm, Sanders leveled out the aircraft and, to his relief, the engine surprisingly restarted. He repeated this negative G test twice more, each time witnessing identical engine failures. This phenomenon was traced to the aircraft's float-type carburetor, a design that relied on gravity to deliver fuel. Under conditions of negative G, the flow of fuel to the engine was interrupted completely, causing each power loss. This discovery proved invaluable for American pilots. It revealed a straightforward, practical tactic for escaping a pursuing Zero. Instead of trying to outmaneuver it with sharp turns or complex aerobatics, a pilot should push the control stick forward aggressively and dive with negative G forces. Because the American aircraft used a pressure-type carburetor, immune to the effects of negative G, the engine would keep running during such dives. Meanwhile, the Zero's engine would cut out as the fuel delivery paused, giving the American pilot a brief but critical window to establish more distance and evade the enemy. During the following weeks, Sanders completed a total of 24 test flights, ranging from September 20th to October 15th. Each flight unveiled new insights. While the Zero's well-known agility was real, particularly at lower speeds, under 200 miles per hour, it became less responsive at higher speeds, exceeding approximately 250 miles per hour, when its controls grew stiff and sluggish. In contrast, American fighters, being heavier and equipped with more powerful engines, gained considerable advantages as their speed increased. The comprehensive data obtained from these tests were compiled into detailed technical reports and distributed across all fighter squadrons operating throughout the Pacific Theater. These reports captivated pilots, offering concrete, scientific evidence about the characteristics and vulnerabilities of the Zero, a plane that had long haunted their nightmares. The findings confirmed what some experienced pilots had intuitively suspected. Instead of fighting on the Zero's terms, American pilots could devise tactics that took advantage of its limitations. One notable figure was Commander John Thack, who had already developed his signature maneuver, the Thackweave, before the Akuden Zero was recovered. He first used this tactical move in combat at Midway on June 4, 1942, coinciding with the fatal crash of the famed Zero pilot Koga. Based on intelligence about the Zero's capabilities, Thack designed a defensive tactic involving two aircraft flying side by side, with both weaving toward each other when under attack. This weaving or hooking maneuver would bring the pursuing Zeros into optimal firing range, using the natural motion of the aircraft to unnerve and reposition them for decisive shots. The captured Zero bolstered and refined these tactics, providing precise data on its performance limitations and allowing American pilots to perfect their combat strategies. They adopted a style of fighting called boom and zoom, emphasizing rapid altitude gain and high-speed diving. Pilots learned to climb into advantageous positions, dive at enemy fighters at high speed for a single, well-aimed burst, then continue past the target and zoom back to higher altitude. This method relied on maintaining superior speed and positional advantage, preventing the Zero from engaging in prolonged close-quarters combat and reducing vulnerability to its dogged maneuverability. In essence, the key to beating the Zero was not to engage it at its angular, quick-turning best, but to use altitude, speed, and timing to one's advantage, striking decisively from above and then escaping before the enemy could reorient itself. Through meticulous testing, careful analysis, and the development of innovative tactical doctrines, the United States gained crucial advantages in the Pacific skies, turning the Zero, once an unbeatable symbol of Japanese air power, into a challenge that could be systematically beaten through strategy, science, and skill. Turning the tide of aerial combat during World War II often depended on moments of insight and tactical innovation. The capture of a Zero fighter provided a crucial advantage, offering a rare opportunity to analyze and understand the infamous Japanese aircraft up close. The Allied forces made the strategic decision to use this captured Zero not just as a trophy but as a flying classroom. They put it through a series of rigorous mock dogfights against various American fighters, including the nimble Wildcats, the formidable P-38 Lightnings, and the resilient P-40 Warhawks. These simulated battles were meticulously documented through film, allowing pilots and engineers to scrutinize every maneuver, every weakness, and every strength of the captured aircraft. Through these detailed analyses, American pilots gained first-hand knowledge of the Zero's vulnerabilities. One key revelation was how the aircraft's ailerons froze when flying at high speeds, which significantly impaired rapid rolling maneuvers. Additionally, it was discovered that the Zero's engine would often cut out under negative G-forces, limiting its ability to perform precise dives. Perhaps most critically, it became clear that the Zero could not sustain dives as steep or as fast as some of the heavier American fighters, such as the P-38 Lightning or the P-40 Warhawk. Yet, these technical insights were only part of the puzzle. The most profound discovery was psychological. The perception of the Zero as an invincible enemy began to erode as pilots realized that it had exploitable flaws and was not unbeatable. The Japanese aircraft was, evidently, an expertly engineered machine tailored for high-speed interception and agility in combat, but it was not without its weaknesses. Knowing this transformed the strategic mindset of American pilots. Previously feeling outmatched and powerless, they now had concrete answers and effective tactics. This intelligence instilled a new sense of hope and confidence. With this knowledge, pilots could approach Zero encounters with specific strategies. These could turn what once seemed like hopeless situations into manageable skirmishes. Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders documented these findings in a detailed report, recounting that the initial flights under test conditions uncovered vulnerabilities that could be exploited with the right tactics. He noted that the aircraft's ailerons froze at speeds exceeding 200 knots, causing slow, cumbersome rolls that demanded significant force on the control stick. This critical insight quickly disseminated across the fleet, revolutionizing how fighters were trained and how pilots engaged in combat. New recruits learned to implement a boom and zoom tactic, attacking from a distance at high speed, then zooming away, before ever having to go head-to-head with a Zero in battle. Veteran pilots, many of whom had faced the Zero firsthand in earlier intense engagements, felt a mixture of relief and vindication. Their sacrifices in initial battles had not been in vain, rather, they had served as a foundation for crucial tactical breakthroughs. The courage and losses faced during those early encounters had contributed to a deeper understanding that would save countless lives later on. Among these seasoned pilots was Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth Walsh, a Marine aviator credited with 21 confirmed kills and a recipient of the Medal of Honor. Walsh personally attributed his survival in many subsequent dogfights to the intelligence gleaned from the captured Zero. He recalled how his tactical approach, carefully formulated based on the aircraft's weaknesses, was instrumental in avoiding fatal traps during combat. According to Walsh, the insights from Koga's Zero were a lifesaver, enabling him to execute maneuvers that would have been impossible without that critical knowledge. Equally notable was William Leonard, a celebrated fighter ace who would go on to retire with 6 confirmed victories and achieve the rank of Rear Admiral. Leonard regarded the captured Zero as a priceless treasure, a treasure trove of secrets that arrived at a crucial moment in the Pacific theater. He emphasized that, to his knowledge, no other captured enemy aircraft had revealed such a wealth of information in such a compressed timeframe. The profound impact of these revelations was recognized not only in tactical manuals and training drills but also in the broader strategic considerations of the war effort. Japanese military historian Masatake Okumiya, a retired lieutenant general in Japan's Air Self-Defense Force, remarked that the intelligence gained from the Ikuden Zero was as significant, if not more so, as the pivotal victory at Midway. The loss of that aircraft marked a turning point not only for the Americans but also posed a severe setback for the Japanese military's confidence and operational planning. Beyond its tactical significance, the impact of the Ikuden Zero extended into the realm of aeronautical engineering and aircraft design. American engineers pored over the wreckage, seeking insights that could help them develop aircraft capable of countering the Zero more effectively. Prior to the capture, work on the F-6F Hellcat was already underway, orchestrated by Grumman, as a replacement for the Wildcat, an aircraft that had shown promise yet lacked the advantages needed to dominate the Zero. The design of the Hellcat was to be influenced heavily by intelligence reports from pilots who had fought at Coral Sea and Midway, providing early cues on the aircraft's strengths and building upon the lessons learned from studying the Zero. The Grumman F-6F Hellcat was rapidly developed to counter that formidable enemy aircraft. It achieved remarkable performance, reaching top speeds of up to 380 miles per hour. An impressive feat for its era. Its rate of climb was on par with or even surpassed, that of the Zero, allowing it to rise quickly to engage or escape as needed. Importantly, the Hellcat also retained crucial armor protection and equipped self-sealing fuel tanks, features that greatly enhanced pilot survivability. Designed with a strategic edge in mind, this fighter was built to confront Zero fighters on more advantageous terms than the earlier Wildcat, which had struggled to match the Japanese aircraft in combat. Furthermore, the Hellcat incorporated a deep understanding of the Zero's vulnerabilities and shortcomings. It was engineered for high-speed combat maneuvers at which the Zero was less adept. Powered by a potent Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine, it delivered an astounding 2,000 horsepower, more than double the power output of the Zero. This significant leap in engine performance enabled Hellcat pilots to employ the high-altitude, high-speed tactic known as boom and zoom, allowing them to dive down fiercely on enemy fighters from above, then climb back up to safety, effectively controlling the terms of engagement. By November of 1943, the Ikuten Zero, a captured surviving example of the Japanese fighter, was displayed at Washington National Airport as a war trophy, symbolizing the virtual turning point of American aerial dominance in the Pacific. The aircraft, which had caused considerable terror among Allied forces, particularly in the Pacific theater, could be seen firsthand by thousands of Americans during the celebrations marking 25 years of airmail service. Many viewed the Zero with awe and apprehension, observing its sleek, predatory silhouette, which seemed to embody danger itself. Few recognized at the time that this aircraft represented a radically different design philosophy. To the Americans, it seemed almost sinister, a harbinger of fierce enemy determination. Yet, the physical model of that fighting machine concealed inherent weaknesses. As the war advanced into 1944, the Zero was gradually retired from frontline combat and reallocated primarily for use as a training aircraft at North Island. New American pilots learned firsthand about the aircraft's capabilities and vulnerabilities by flying against it in controlled training scenarios. During this period, a captured Model 520 Zero, taken during the liberation of Guam, was added to the training arsenal, preparing pilots who would later face Zeros over the Philippines. The first encounters with the Zero, especially in California skies, began between American fighters, including the Ikuten Zero, and the Japanese planes during training exercises and early combat, building vital experience for American crews. This period highlighted the strikingly different approaches taken by American and Japanese aircraft designers. American aviation engineers worked tirelessly to improve fighter protection, equipping aircraft with armor, self-sealing fuel tanks, and robust structural features. The F-4U Corsair, introduced into service in 1943, exemplified these advances. It boasted armor to shield its pilot, self-sealing tanks to prevent fires, and a powerful 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine that translated into unmatched combat potential. Similarly, the P-38 Lightning featured twin engines and heavy armament, complemented by protective measures that prioritized pilot safety amidst the chaos of aerial dogfights. Meanwhile, Japanese designers responded to the increasing American dominance by attempting to enhance the protective features of their Zeros. The introduction of the A6M5 variant in 1943 saw the addition of a 55mm armored glass windscreen and an 8mm thick armor plate situated behind the pilot's seat. These modifications, however, resulted in increased weight with little to no compensatory gain in performance. The Nakajima Sake engine, which powered these later models, remained limited in output, hovering around 1,000 horsepower, an increase of only 16% over earlier versions, while the aircraft's weight swelled by nearly 30%. Consequently, the later Zeros became slower, less maneuverable, and overall less effective than the earlier A6M2 model flown by pilots like Koga. Despite Japanese attempts to emulate American protection philosophies, the lack of powerful engines prevented the Zeros from maintaining their previous edge in speed and agility. The additional armor added weight but did not produce a proportional boost in power, ultimately diminishing the Zero's primary advantage, its exceptional maneuverability and speed. By the year 1944, American fighter pilots had achieved complete dominance over the skies of the Pacific. The battle during June of that year, famously known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, exemplified this shift, as Allied fighters, backed by ubiquitous anti-aircraft guns, shot down over 500 Japanese aircraft. Losses among U.S. forces also mounted, with approximately 43 aircraft lost in combat and around 80 others destroyed by other causes. This relentless onslaught marked a decisive turning point in the Pacific War's aerial phase, revealing the stark contrast between during the early years of the Pacific Theater. A series of tragic and often overlooked incidents occurred during nighttime carrier landings, frequently resulting in operational accidents that could prove fatal. Among these perilous moments, fuel exhaustion became a significant factor, especially as crews pushed their aircraft to reach landing points amid the darkness and chaos of night operations. In this perilous environment, inexperienced Japanese pilots found themselves flying the formidable Zero fighter against seasoned American aviators piloting Hellcats and Corsairs, aircraft that had already established dominance in the skies. Facing such experienced adversaries, these novice Japanese pilots encountered daunting odds from the outset. The attrition rate among Japanese pilots during these engagements was staggering, almost catastrophic.